This is Kara Tucker from the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County, and today we are talking about the 1969 forgotten tornado. And can you tell me what is your full name and where were you born and when?
My name is Peggy Reed Jones, and I was born in Cincinnati, and I currently live in Hartwell, and that's where I lived in Hartwell when the tornado came through.
Is that where you grew up, in Hartwell?
Yes.
So do you kind of live there through childhood and for a long time?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We live in my husband's family home. He grew up in Hartwell too. We've known each other since first grade. So.
Aw, that's great.
So we still live there.
So you live there with your family growing up, and you live there with your family today even. So did you have a large family, small family?
No,
growing up?
I had a brother and a sister, and of course my parents, and 5 of us. Yeah.
Were they also from Hartwell too, or had they moved there?
No, my dad was actually born in Arkansas, raised in Florida, in Indiana, and my mom was born Cincinnati German, raised in Cincinnati, over the Rhine. Yeah.
That's the Cincinnati experience.
Yeah.
What brought him to Cincinnati?
Probably work. I'm not really sure, but probably work.
Sure, that's
Jobs.
fair.
Yeah.
So, growing up in the neighborhood, what was it like before the tornado? Because I know it was one of the most seemingly impacted as far as many parts of the story go.
Well, it was small, tight-knit. We were, the kids would play outside, and when the street lights came on, we would go home. It was relatively like Mayberry type neighborhood. Older homes, a lot of older homes. We lived in an older home. We lived in a 2-family. We lived downstairs, and then we had a family living upstairs from us. And we lived, we had all sorts of people living there, actually. We had the old school that was impacted by the tornado. Actually, when we first moved to Hartwell, we lived in it for about a year.
Wow.
For about a year. And I remember from a very, very young age, I guess I was about 3 or 4, and vivid memories. We only lived there for a year, but for some reason I just really studied things as a child, just studied things. And I remember the architecture, I remember the rooms, I remember details about that building. And then my mom decided to move out because there was a roach problem. It was, a lot of people were living in there, just packed in. A lot of Appalachians came and lived there and come up for work. And then we had some people living there that their kids would go home to Kentucky in the summer and go to tobacco farming. And it was interesting. It was very interesting living there. The neighborhood, when we moved out of that building, we moved across the street, right across from it. And like I said, we lived on the first floor, then we had a family living upstairs from us. But we were not rich, obviously, but it was, I had friends, we had friends that we would ride bikes, and we had a lot of, like I said, the older homes. I loved the older homes even from a young child, just looking at the architecture. Trees, a lot of trees. And we went to school. We didn't go to school obviously there because it was an apartment building, but at the old school, but we went to the newer school, which was built in the 20s. And I went there from K through 6. And went to Woodward, 7 through 12. So it was all, like a nice little tight-knit community, old-fashioned,
Sure.
Yeah.
So we'll get to the day of the tornado. And what do you remember about that day before things did it?
Yeah, well, my sister worked at GTE Sylvania. She had just gotten a job there, working as a secretary. So they had a company picnic that day in Sharon Woods. So my dad worked for the L&N Railroad, so he was not home that day. He did not go with us. He was either in Corbin or DeCourcy. He worked down in Kentucky. He would be gone for like 2 and 3 days at a time. And so it was me and my mom and my sister went. My sister had a 68 Mustang, really cool, fastback, We rode to the picnic in Sharon Woods, and it was drizzly all day. It was kind of cloudy, drizzly, and not a whole lot of fun at the picnic. They grilled out and they had hamburgers and stuff, but it wasn't like a nice, pretty sunny day where you could run around. And so we left a little early and went home drove home, and my sister said she remembers seeing a strange cloud, but I don't remember that. But she says, "Oh yeah, I remember seeing a strange cloud on the way home," but I don't remember that. But anyway, we got home, and you'd think that since we were at a picnic all day, we wouldn't be hungry, but it was like my mom said, "I'm going to make supper." So, and my brother was there. He didn't go to the picnic with us, but he was at home. And like I said, my dad wasn't there, and we had a dog. And my mom said, "I'm going to make supper." So my sister and I sat here, my sister sat here. My chair was like across from the window. I could see out a window that looked out on the yard of the old school. Couldn't see the old school really from the window, but you could see kind of the yard.
Sure.
And I remember sitting there, and it was like around 7-ish. So a little bit before 7, I think. And it started raining harder. And I remember looking out the window, and the rain was coming like this, and then it was coming like this, and then it was going like that. And it was completely gray. Did not hear a sound. I do not remember hearing one sound. And I saw black flecks, like every now and then, these black things going by. I'm like, so like, "Get under the table." I know one of us yelled, "Get under the table." So we got under the table with the dog. My brother was in the front room trying to close windows. He had a window come in on it. He cut his arm. It wasn't bad or anything, but the way our apartment was situated was we had, in the room next to the kitchen, there were these windows that opened like this, came out open like that, 2 of them. And they never closed. I mean, even in fine weather, you could never close them. They were always off track, and they would blow open when a wind came, or they would leak. So anyway, the wind just blew those windows open, and opposite those windows we had a bathroom door that thankfully was open, because all the wind went out the bathroom. If the door was closed, the wind would have come in right where we were. So we were very thankful that we're thinking that may have been what might have happened. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So of course, in our house, we had all of the windows blown out. The family upstairs couldn't get out because they had an outside porch that they would go in from. It's like steps that go up to the second floor. The porch was blown off, just blown off. We had 2 twin maple trees out in our front yard. One of them snapped. And then next door to us, we had a family that had 8 kids, big family. And they had, their second story was their bedroom in the front room. They had done some remodeling, so they had some really airtight new casement windows up there. So they had a room up there that just exploded, and the girl whose room it was, she could feel the pressure, so she left that room and she sat on a landing and just kind of covered her head. It missed her. I mean, thankfully nobody was hurt in the family, but all of her furniture and she liked to sew, all of her patterns, her sewing machine was in our backyard. I remember that. So anyway, after it happened, like I said, I don't remember the train roar. I don't remember any sound, nothing. It must have been white noise or something, I don't know. But you'd think that I would have heard something. But anyway, they came with all the kids, stair-step kids, walked. They couldn't stay in their house because water was just pouring in because the upstairs was gone. Mm-hmm. So they walked from screaming, crying, from their house to our house, because at least we had a roof. Sure. We didn't have any windows, and we had mud in our beds. And
was it still raining then?
It was drizzling. Yeah, it was drizzling. And they walked through all the glass, all the wires, trees, down over to our house. And I remember they were in our kitchen, and we had one of these sinks, these old-time porcelain sinks that stuck out with pipes underneath. They were all sitting underneath our sink and all along our kitchen walls, and crying and just praying, and it was very like, well, this is weird. This is like a dream. This has to be a dream. And Oh, and I remember, I do remember this, initially when it was, right when it was over, I remember standing up and looking out our back door, and I saw the building in back of us. It was a 2-story building. It used to be a store back when it was first built, like it was built in the 1880s, I think. Anyway, I remember seeing, there was an apartment above and an apartment below now, but there was a couple bricks. I remember there was no roof, and I remember seeing bricks, like, kind of like, last couple bricks were just falling off of this building, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what? I mean, it's just like, what is going on here? So we went out on our back porch, and we saw the school, and it was this huge 3-story Romanesque, I guess you want to call it, building that had a tower. This tower that was above the stairwell. And I remember that stairwell so well. I mean, when we lived there, it had slate steps. It had, after it was a school, a man bought it and turned it into a nice apartment building. And he had these naked ladies all over, like they were like relief, like plaster with the little gauze dresses, you know. It was supposed to be arty, you know. Anyway, I remember those in there. But they had those, it had windows, it had, like I said, the tower up there. But anyway, we saw the tower was gone, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what is going on? You know, we were just like I said, it was almost like a dream.
What was in the tower? Was it also living spaces?
No,
or?
It was just a stairwell.
Oh, okay.
It was just a stairwell, and it, you know, a slate roof. I'm guessing it was a slate roof.
But still, yeah, very.
Yeah, it was
a big
ornate.
piece of architecture.
Yeah. So, and there was a tree. I remember there was a tree in the yard that my sister and I loved. This tree. It was a huge, perfect maple tree. It was just the perfect maple tree, and that was gone. And of course, we didn't know at the time that people had died. We, at the time, right after it happened, we had no clue. We had no clue.
Of course.
So our phone, how much time do I have?
Oh, you're fine.
Okay.
You're fine. Keep going.
Our phone,
Don't worry
you
about
could call, people could call in, but nobody could call out with our phone. Of course, we had no electricity. My dad, I don't know how we notified him, but he came home that night, and he had to show ID to get in the neighborhood.
Really?
Yeah.
So had like police enforcement
Yeah,
kind of closed
I
areas
yeah,
off? Or
yeah.
to prove that you actually lived there and had business?
Right. So he came home that night, and my sister had a friend who lived in Groesbeck, and somehow we got in touch with her. Her name was Kathy, and she invited us, me and my mom and my sister, to stay at her house that night because we had no windows. My dad came home, and then my brother, we had this shotgun, okay, no ammo. It's an old shotgun we just had in the closet. They got this shotgun out in case anybody tried to come in. I don't know what they're going to do with an unloaded shotgun, and we had a little dog who was so timid, but you know, she was a dog. My dad and my brother stayed, they boarded up the windows as best they could. They stayed the night in the house. Then we went to Groesbeck, and I remember there were these guys in the neighborhood, we called they were kind of like hoodlums. We called them greasers. They were just kind of black leather jackets, slick back hair, you know, and the kind of guys at school, it's like, stay away from them, you know. They came to our house to pick us up, my sister, myself, and my mom, to take us to Vine Street, because Vine Street was a couple blocks away from us, to where we could go with my sister's friend. And I'm like, I'm not going with these guys. They had a note that was handwritten by my sister's friend, like, we're on Vine Street near Frisch's or wherever. It was somewhere up on Vine they were. And like, I'm not going with them. I was so afraid. But they walked us to the car where my sister's friend was, and we stayed the night in Groesbeck. And I couldn't sleep that night. Every little sound I heard, I was like, wide awake. And the next morning, the family that we stayed with, they were so nice. They were saying like, well, we're not going to go to church today because we have a greater thing we need to do here. We need to take care of you ladies. So they took care of us. I was 14, and we didn't bring any clothes with us. I mean, I didn't bring anything. We just went, and they gave me some of their clothes, and I wore them. They took us out to breakfast the next day, and of course, what's all over the headlines the next day? Charles Manson, Sharon Tate murders. Like, the world is ending. The world has to be ending. It's like, oh my goodness. It was weird. And then that afternoon we went back home, and we saw them bringing the body bags out of the school. And that, you know, we just had no idea. We had no idea. It was a woman and her 2 sons. We did not know them personally, but we knew of them,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I knew her cousin. And that was something you'll never forget. I mean, like, you know, you're just watching from your back porch. You're watching the fire department there, and you're watching them bring them out. And, like, wow, this is real. You know, this is real. And it was very sad. And the ensuing days, I guess it was probably at least a week we didn't have electricity. We got some new windows put in. They weren't new. They were the old windows with the weights. We just got new glass in them. We still had the old windows. We got those fixed. We were renting the house. The landlord fixed them. And the people upstairs, the fire department had to get them out. The fire department, I think, got them out the same night as the tornado happened because they couldn't come out of the house. So we had, of course, no refrigeration, no electricity. We put our stuff in my dad went out and bought a brand new garbage can, filled it with ice. We had bologna and donuts. That's what we had, bologna sandwiches and donuts every day. My mom went up to the school on Vine and got a voucher from the Red Cross to pay for freezer meat. She lost all of her meat in the freezer and stuff, so they gave her a $50 check to go get her some new groceries, which I thought was nice. Then my sister's Mustang, okay, she parked it. We didn't have enough driveway space we didn't have a garage or anything for the cars. My dad had a car, sister had a car, my brother had a car. He just bought this, I want to say it was a Comet, a 61 Comet. It was white. He parked it next to my sister's. There was a light fixture right by our house that it just kind of did something weird. It just snapped off and it went through the fastback of the Mustang. So she had a light fixture hanging down, like on the driver's side, where if you get in, it's like, ooh, there's a big light fixture here. So she got it all fixed. It wasn't totaled or anything, but my brother's car was totaled. The tornado picked his car up and slammed it into her car. So, but her car she just had a few dents, but his was totaled. And my mom, God rest her soul, she would always tell us there would never be a tornado in this valley. We live in a valley. There would never be a tornado here. Because we would hear about tornadoes here, and, you know, like I would say, well, we're going to have a tornado. Oh, no, we'd never have a tornado here. And another thing, she was always kind of an anxious person, worrisome person. And she, you know, we had the moon landing the month before, and she said, those astronauts messed our atmosphere up. That's why we had this tornado. She said, they shouldn't be up there messing with our atmosphere. So she blamed it on that. But she was never the same. She was never the same after that. I mean, none of us were. But she was, like I said, a real fearful, anxious, worrisome person. She was a lot worse afterward. She was always worried about everything, you know. And even our neighbor that lived next door, we kept in touch with them. They moved into Wyoming, and we kept in touch with them over the years. And our neighbor said, Frida was never the same after that tornado. She was never the same. I know. Trying to think of something else, if there was anything else.
Definitely left an impact on your family. Do you remember how much it changed the actual community of Hartwell? I understand the kind of sort of downtown area was hit particularly hard.
Yeah, Frisch's was damaged. Their sign fell down on a bunch of cars in the parking lot. And I do remember, there's one more thing. maybe a couple more things. I don't know if I can think of them.
That's
But
all right.
the Reds were playing that afternoon and that evening or whatever at, would have been Crosley Field, I guess. We had a transistor radio. The Reds game was still going on. I mean, it was like through all this. We were sitting in our kitchen with all these kids crying. Ugh. We turn on the radio to get news. Nothing. Like they were playing like, oh, there's a strike 3. You know, I'm like, what? They don't even know what's going on. They're just playing the ball game like nothing's happening. And this is before the sirens. So we had no sirens at all. And somebody told me, I don't know who, said that that tornado that happened in '69 was helped them to get the sirens started, the civil defense sirens started, because we didn't have anything before that. Oh, okay, how it impacted the neighborhood.
Or even just living in the neighborhood, did it change it in any way?
Yeah, well, the building, the old school, there was a guy that owned it, his name was Mr. Harris. And he, of course, everybody moved out. He tore that place down. He hired a team of guys, not more than half a dozen guys, strong guys. And he himself, he was probably, as a little kid, I was 14, he looked old to me. He looked ancient. I was thinking he was 80. He might not have been 80, but he was old. And he was up there on a ladder himself directing these guys. They took it apart brick by brick,
Wow.
by brick by brick, and it took several years. And I remember going the next year, 1970, I had my first serious boyfriend, and he and I would walk through it. It was an empty shell. We'd walk through it, and of course there was nothing around it, no protection, nothing. We just like, let's go explore this. You know, we never went. We couldn't go upstairs or anything, but.
So were all of the things you remember seeing growing up, were they gone by that point on the
Oh
inside?
yeah,
Totally different
yeah,
on the
yeah.
inside?
Yeah, and I got a really cool old Singer sewing machine wrought iron thing out of it. It was just sitting in one of the rooms. I was like, well, I'll take it. So we took it, you know, painted it up and everything, put a tabletop on it. I still have it.
Oh wow, so
Yeah.
that's almost a tornado artifact
Yeah,
in itself in a way.
yeah. But you know, I was just a shy little kid. Just, you know, I was always like looking at everything and like watching people and I was like, it brought me out of my shell a little bit, this event, you know, like, oh, what'd you do this summer? Because there were people that I went to school with, you know, Bond Hill, Roseline, they didn't experience any of it. But my husband, actually, he was living in the house that we live in now, which was like a block and a half away from where, you know, it happened. And he and his brothers and sisters were on his back porch watching all the trees going. So their house was not damaged or anything, but this is kind of a funny story. In 1970, his family had a little bit more money than ours did, but his dad signed them up on this house exchange list where like people, it would go all over the country. Like if you wanted to spend a summer in Cincinnati, you could stay at this house. If you wanted to go to Chicago, you could stay at this house on this list. Anyway, their house was listed as a vacation home. So I don't know why anybody would want to come to Cincinnati back then, but I mean, we've got a lot of stuff now, you know, we've got a lot of stuff now. But anyway, this family, they went to, I don't know where they went, but this family from another town came and stayed at their house that summer. And the family evidently saw all the damage and everything, and they, my husband's dad had a 24 foot above ground pool outside their kitchen window. Their family is weird. They used to jump out of the living room window into the pool. But anyway, they didn't clean it out before they left on vacation, so it had debris in it. So this family's like, we can't stay here. This neighborhood is like trashed. We don't want, this pool has debris in it. So they left, and his family got kicked off that list.
Oh no.
So they couldn't be on that list anymore as a house exchange program. But anyway, as far as changing, yeah, the old school and some of the friends that I knew that lived in the old school were gone. I had a lot of stories to tell people. Oh, there was the house in back of us, the building, they put the roof back on. Of course, the house next to us was torn down with the family who moved to Wyoming. So we had an empty lot next to us. There was another house on Hunsford, which we lived on the corner of Woodbine and Hunsford. There's another house that was, there were these twin girls that lived there. They were taking a bath actually at the time of the tornado hit, and they were younger than me. They were 8 or 9 years old, and they, I heard they held onto the pipes because the half of the house, the side that they were on, which I thought was kind of strange. It wasn't the side that got hit. It was the other side, just totally fell where they were up in the bathroom. Just totally fell. I don't know how that would happen, but it did.
Sure.
And anyway, there was a hole there since their house was gone. So there were these holes, different places, and that was odd, very odd. And we stayed. We lived in that same house until '72. Then we moved to the other side of the block in a newer house that was built, I think, in 1915.
Right.
So,
That's all relative.
Yeah, my sister still lives there. So.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I think that's probably enough. I think I've talked your head off.
That's okay. No, they're very important stories to
Yeah,
capture.
so.
And
I mean, if you have
share.
any other questions for me, I can't think of anything else. But it was definitely a defining moment, in our lives. So.
It sounds that way. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
All right.